Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It has been about how many years? 7 years? I think it's 7 years since I started my channel. I remember starting it in the summer of 2013. I was bored, it was vacation time. I was inspired by this booktube community on YouTube, which I had stumbled across, and it seemed like the perfect thing for me. I love to read, and this booktube community encouraged me to read even more. With that trip down memory lane, let's just dive into some new books I have bought. I have quite an interesting selection of books here. Let's start with one of the books that I am the most excited about, and that is this beauty. This is obviously Ask Again, Yes by Mary Beth Keane. I got it in this excellent paperback edition. I love these where they have this on the cover because they are the perfect floppy paperback versions, which I just love to read. But besides from that, I also really want to get to know the story. I have actually been curious about this book for half a year now, since I read about it on Goodreads, and it was part of the Goodreads Choice Awards of 2019. I have heard this book being compared to East of Eden by John Steinbeck, which is one of my favorite books. I've also heard it's a book about families and secrets and generations. I think those kinds of books are my type of book, you know, so I had to get this, and I'm very pleased about this edition. Another book I got in the same edition is This Tender Land by William Kent Kruger. I haven't heard at all about this author, but the thing that got me curious is that I heard about it through this podcast called What Should I Read Next? This woman who is the host at the podcast, she every summer publishes a summer reading guide of books that she personally recommends. And this book was on that list, and it really spoke to me, the way that it deals with growing up, coming of age, these children who are escaping on a river together, and all the experiences and adventures that they encounter on their way. I feel like this could be a good book for the summer when you really want to drift out into the laziness of the summer. I don't know if this makes any sense, but I felt like this would be a good book for me to read very soon. So here we have it. Let's continue with a non-fiction book, and that's another one that I have had my eyes on for I think some years now, so I decided to finally get it, and that is The Romanov Sisters by Helen Rappaport. So obviously this is an account of the Romanov sisters who got brutally killed during the Russian Revolution in the beginning of the 1900s. It's very gruesome how this took place. All of the family was basically hunted down during the night in their homes and slaughtered just all of a sudden by the people who were protesting against this royal regime. And this one zooms in on the 4 daughters. I think it's about their lives and what led up to this brutal event that finished their lives, and it's just very heartbreaking. This book is pretty huge, I have to say, but when you look at it, when you look into it, about 100 pages are notes. Here the book ends. So we have 380 pages of actual book, and then we have how many pages? About 100 pages of notes. So anyway, I'm rambling. I have this book as well. Then I also decided to purchase a classic which I have read previously, and for some reason I was in the mood to reread it again because I had forgotten most of the story, and it keeps reappearing on people's favorite classics that they have ever read. So I'm curious, I really want to read it again. And that is Tess of the dUrbervilles by Thomas Hardy. I remember reading his other famous book, the one with a triangle, Far from the Madding Crowd, that's the name, and that's my favorite of his. And I also remember reading this one and liking it, but not loving it as much as the other one. So I'm going to give this another go just because I want to, and it's not one that I'm going to read this summer. I think I will save it for when autumn and winter comes and I'm in the mood for this kind of classic. That's all I have to say about this book. Let's continue with the next one, which is a book I have already read, so you will hear more about it in my wrap-up by the end of the month. But the book is Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Susan. So this is another classic, and it's about these 3 women who are all based in New York and around this phenomenon of movie stars and celebrities and drugs. And it's about them growing up, becoming women, becoming wives, and how this life of Hollywood and movies ruins them and ruins their futures. So it's a very depressing book, but you will hear more about my thoughts on it in my wrap-up. There's also a movie, and that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to recommend it because the book is definitely 100 times better. The last 2 books I have are Danish, so bear with me. I don't think they are out in English, but I still really want to include them in this video because there might be some Danes out there who are able to read Danish books. First book is a book that is very popular these days in Denmark. Now, this book is called Tabita by Iben Mondrup. It's about Greenland and a very young girl who is being adopted to Denmark, and then it's about how her roots are still in Greenland and how she cannot really accept her new life in Denmark. It's a very heartbreaking book. I have already read it, but what I wanted to say was that this is a typical Danish new hardcover book, and I'm pretty sure that most of you are going to be flabbergasted when you hear how much I paid for it. This is normal price for a new hardback book in Denmark, and I paid what is about $60, 60 American dollars, not 16 but 60. I wasn't going to buy this book. I was definitely going to get it at the library and save that money, but the waiting list at the library was about 2 years long, and I wasn't going to wait for that long. So I finally craved and got it, and it's a beautiful book which is going to look pretty on my shelves. But I'm just saying that when you complain about those very expensive books in your country, remember that in Denmark the books are about $60 when they just come out. The last Danish book was not that pricey just because it's a paperback, and I think it's been out for about a year, and that is Winterland or Vinterland by Kim Faber and Jenny Pedersen. It's a crime book. The reason I bought this is because my mother is very interested to read this book. It takes place in Denmark, where she grew up basically, and she's very curious to read it and see how it talks about the setting. But the reason I bought it is that we're going to share this book, so that I will read it first and then I will make some notes in the book as I read, in which I write about my thoughts or some discoveries or whatever, and then I will give it to my mother, who can then read it and add her notes, and then it will hopefully become our book, a book that both of us have read and that we have shared, and I will always have those notes to look forward to or to look into whenever I feel like it. So I think it's going to be a very special reading experience. And this one I paid about, how much is this? About $25 for this one. So it's definitely a lot cheaper than the other one, but still a pretty pricey book. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed my video and seeing some of the new books that I've got. Thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, happy reading!